What's up, y'all? It's Carla, aka Sela the Poet. How's everybody doing? So it is Saturday night and the mood is right. But for real though, um, I'm having a pretty somber day. I had to attend a funeral, and the person that passed on was sick. He was sick for a while and he passed on. May God rest his soul. I went to show encouragement and support to the family. May he rest in peace. So, when, there's a death in the family or there's a tragedy, sometimes those are the things that kind of awaken you and make you reflect on the importance of time, and it lets you look at your mortality, because we're all human beings and we've all been given a certain amount of time on this earth. It also makes me think about grief and about loss. you know when you're at that type of gathering, there are people crying, there are people speaking about memories of the person, and the highlights of their life, and what type of person they were. And it just makes me think about, some of the losses in my life. Loss doesn't always have to be death. I mean, death is a major, major loss, especially if it's a loved one or somebody that is close to you, a lover, a child, something like that is going to impact your life significantly. But there are other losses in life, like the loss of a job, the loss of income, the loss of where you live. You might, have an eviction notice or something like that. The loss of a romantic partner, if you're going through a breakup, the loss of a spouse, God forbid, they passed away in death or by tragedy, the loss of, a job. There's so many things that we can also grieve, that may not be death related. When it comes to me, I am acquainted with grief. I am acquainted with loss. Um, there are some things that I had to grieve, like the loss of certain relationships within my family. Um, Anybody who has heard my story before knows about the domestic violence and the child abuse that I went through. And as a result of that, the consequences were that I went no contact with some of the people that, did engage in abusive behavior towards me. And you have to grieve, the loss of that relationship. It's not easy. It's not easy to go from being so close and, having a biological relative, that's so close to you, that you have to now distance yourself, and you have to basically, live as if they don't exist, or you can live as if they exist, but you just don't have any dealings with them because you're trying to keep yourself safe from further violence or whatever. And it's not easy. Loss and grief aren't easy things to deal with, but it is a part of the human experience. And like I said, when I go to a funeral, or I go to or I hear about a tragedy, it always reminds me of mortality. It always reminds me, to make the most of the time that we are given. Time is, a very precious gift, and we can't take it for granted. So, yeah, I'm just here trying to encourage myself, irregardless of the sadness I feel, the sense of loss that I'm feeling. I'm kind of like talking myself through it and stuff. And just trying to focus on, the good. I know that, we'll usually say, the person is no longer suffering. That kind of, is a self comforting mechanism, but it doesn't erase the loss of a life, the loss of a father, a brother, or a friend, or a coworker, that you may have had some attachment to or some ties to. So, But yeah, just dealing with grief and loss are just a part of the human experience. And um, I'm just trying to, you know, like I said, um, even though, it was a sad experience, I'm trying to just put my mindset back on to where it needs to be, which is, being there for my children and being there for myself, showing up for myself, and just trying to keep moving forward. I just finished, throwing down, making some food. I made 2 meals. I had some spaghetti with ground turkey, and I made some chicken. So I'm pretty sure, that we are going to be set with food for the next few days. And for dessert, I might have myself some warm oatmeal cookies. But what y'all doing this Saturday? What's everybody up to? Anybody going to a party, going to dance classes, or anybody going out, with on a date or something like that? Anybody going to hang out? If you want, you could share it in the comment section. And that's all I have to say for now. Just you know, uh, going through different life experiences one day at a time and dealing with, each experience as it comes along. All right? Take care. Peace.